What if I told you that the phone call I received at 2:47 in the morning changed the way I practice cardiology forever? My father, 67 years old at the time, was in the emergency room. Chest pain, shortness of breath, blood pressure through the roof at 195/110. And when I got there, when I reviewed his chart, when I talked to the ER doctor, I asked one simple question. What did he do last night before bed? And the answer hit me like a freight train. He had done something that millions of seniors do every single night. Something that seems completely harmless, something that nobody warns you about, but something that was literally causing his blood vessels to constrict, his blood pressure to spike, and his heart to work overtime while he slept. And here is what broke my heart. I am a cardiologist. I have spent 15 years studying the cardiovascular system, and my own father, living in my house, eating dinner at my table, had developed a nighttime routine that was slowly killing him. And I had not noticed. I had not asked. I had not paid attention. That night in the ER, I made him a promise. I said, "Dad, we are going to change 5 specific things about what you do before bed, starting tonight." And over the next 6 weeks, his blood pressure dropped 28 points systolic. His morning headaches disappeared, his energy came back, and his cardiologist, who had been considering adding a 3rd blood pressure medication, was stunned. And then I started looking at my patients, and I realized something terrifying. Almost every senior I was treating for hypertension, for heart disease, for cardiovascular problems was making at least 3 out of these same 5 mistakes every single night. Now, before you click away, before you assume this is another fear-mongering health video, I am not anti-medication. I prescribe blood pressure medications when they are needed. I believe in modern medicine. Cardiovascular drugs have saved millions of lives, and they continue to do so every single day. But here is what I also believe. I believe that before we add a 2nd or 3rd medication, before we increase dosages, before we accept that high blood pressure is just inevitable after 60, we need to look at what is happening between 8 p.m. and bedtime. Because those 3 hours before sleep are when your cardiovascular system is either healing or being destroyed. And most people have no idea which one is happening to them. Your nighttime routine is not neutral. It is not just about getting ready for bed. What you do in those final hours before sleep directly impacts your blood pressure, your heart rate, your arterial health, and whether you wake up the next morning with your cardiovascular system stronger or weaker than the day before. So today, I am going to walk you through the 5 specific things that I, as a cardiologist and as a son, would never allow my parents to do after 8 p.m. And I want you to stay with me through this entire video because some of these are going to shock you. Some of these are things that doctors themselves do. Things that seem healthy, things that are recommended in mainstream health articles. And by the end of this video, you are going to understand exactly why each one is dangerous and what you should be doing instead. And please, if this information helps you, if it makes you think about your own parents differently, hit that subscribe button. Share this with someone who has aging parents. Share it with your mom or dad directly. This information could literally add years to someone's life. All right. Let's start with the first one, and this is the one that almost killed my father. Mistake number 1, drinking chamomile tea with sugar or honey after 8 p.m. The first thing I would never let my parents do after 8 p.m. is drink chamomile tea or any herbal tea sweetened with sugar or honey. Now, I know what you're thinking. Dr. Chen, chamomile tea is supposed to be healthy. It's relaxing. It helps you sleep. What could possibly be wrong with it? And you're right, chamomile tea by itself is fine. The problem is not the tea. The problem is what people put in it. Here's what most people don't realize. When you consume sugar or honey late at night, especially within 2 to 3 hours of bedtime, your pancreas releases insulin. And insulin does something that most people don't know about. Insulin tells your kidneys to hold on to sodium. More sodium retention means more fluid in your blood vessels. More fluid means higher blood pressure. But it gets worse.
That insulin spike also triggers your sympathetic nervous system. That's your fight or flight system. It's supposed to be quiet at night. It's supposed to shut down so your parasympathetic system, your rest and digest system, can take over. But when you spike your insulin at 9 p.m. with a cup of sweetened tea, you're basically telling your body, stay alert, stay activated, keep the blood pressure up. And then you lie down to sleep, and your blood pressure, which should naturally drop by 10 to 20% during sleep, stays elevated. You become what we call a non-dipper. And non-dippers have twice the risk of heart attack and stroke compared to people whose blood pressure drops normally at night. I've seen this pattern hundreds of times. Patient comes in, blood pressure is high, we add medication, it helps a little, but not enough. We add a second medication, still not where we want it. And then I ask, what do you drink before bed? And they say, oh, just a nice relaxing cup of chamomile tea with honey. And I tell them, stop the honey. Drink the tea plain or with a tiny bit of stevia if you absolutely must have sweetness. And 3 weeks later, their blood pressure is down 8, 10, sometimes 12 points. No medication change, just removing the nighttime sugar. This was my father's mistake. Every single night, 9 p.m., chamomile tea with 2 teaspoons of honey. He thought he was being healthy. He thought he was helping himself relax and sleep better. And instead, he was spiking his insulin, activating his stress response, retaining sodium, and keeping his blood pressure dangerously elevated all night long. So, if your parent drinks tea before bed, make sure it's unsweetened. That's the rule. No sugar, no honey, no agave. If they hate plain tea, try herbal varieties with naturally interesting flavors like peppermint or ginger, but no sweeteners after 8 p.m. Period.
Mistake number 2. Watching the news or scrolling social media after 9 p.m. The second thing I would never let my parents do before bed is watch the evening news or scroll through social media after 9 p.m. And this one is going to be controversial, but hear me out. Your parents grew up in an era where watching the 10 o'clock news was just what you did. It was a ritual. It was how you stayed informed. And I am not telling you they should be uninformed. I am telling you that the timing matters. Here's the cardiovascular reality. When you watch the news, especially evening news, which is designed to grab attention, your body perceives it as stress. A story about crime, a story about politics, a story about economic problems, a story about health scares. Your brain does not differentiate between real immediate danger and media danger. It releases cortisol either way. It releases adrenaline either way, and your blood pressure rises either way. Studies have shown that blood pressure can increase by 10 to 15 millimeters of mercury just from watching stressful news content. And if that happens at 10 p.m. right before bed, guess what? Your body goes to sleep in a state of stress. Your blood pressure stays elevated, your heart rate stays elevated, and you rob yourself of the natural nocturnal dip that is supposed to protect your cardiovascular system. The same thing happens with social media. Scrolling through Facebook, reading comment arguments, seeing upsetting posts, even seeing too much stimulating content, positive or negative, activates your nervous system when it should be calming down. I started tracking this with my father. We got him a home blood pressure monitor, and I had him check his pressure at 8 p.m., then again at 10 p.m. after watching the news, then again the next morning. And the pattern was clear. On nights he watched the news, his 10 p.m. reading was 15 to 20 points higher than his 8 p.m. reading, and his morning reading was higher too. But on nights he skipped the news, his blood pressure dropped steadily through the evening, and he woke up with better numbers. Now, I am not saying your parents should never watch the news. I'm saying they should watch it earlier, by 5 p.m., 6 p.m., 7 p.m. Give their body time to process it, to calm down before sleep. Or, better yet, have them read the news in the morning when their cortisol is naturally higher anyway, and it will not disrupt their nighttime cardiovascular recovery. If your parent is glued to the 10 o'clock news every night, have a conversation. Suggest they record it and watch it the next morning with breakfast, or switch to a calmer evening routine. Reading a physical book, listening to music, gentle conversation. anything that does not spike stress hormones right before sleep. This one change alone, eliminating late-night news, can drop nighttime blood pressure by an average of 8 to 12 millimeters. That is the equivalent of adding a blood pressure medication, but without the side effects. Mistake number 3. Eating a late dinner or nighttime snack after 8 p.m. The third thing I would never let my parents do after 8 p.m. is eat a meal or a snack. And I know this is hard. I know your parents' generation was raised to have dinner at 7 or 8 p.m. I know they might get hungry later in the evening. I know the idea of not eating after a certain time feels restrictive or extreme. But here is the cardiovascular science. When you eat late at night, your body has to work to digest that food. Digestion raises your heart rate. It raises your metabolic rate. It activates your sympathetic nervous system, which is exactly the opposite of what should be happening before bed. But the bigger issue is insulin. Again, when you eat carbohydrates or protein late at night, your pancreas releases insulin. And as I explained with the tea, insulin causes sodium retention in the kidneys. More sodium equals more fluid equals higher blood pressure. There's a study from the journal Hypertension Research that compared people who ate dinner at 6 p.m. versus people who ate dinner at 9 p.m. The late eaters had significantly impaired nocturnal blood pressure dipping. Their blood pressure dropped by only 5% during sleep compared to 14% in the early eaters. That's a massive difference. That's the difference between being a dipper and a non-dipper. That's the difference between healthy cardiovascular aging and accelerated heart disease. Late-night eating also spikes cortisol. Your body perceives food intake as a signal to be alert, to be active. Cortisol rises to help with digestion and metabolism, but elevated cortisol at night is terrible for blood pressure. It keeps blood vessels constricted. It keeps the stress response activated. I see this all the time in my practice. Patient with uncontrolled blood pressure despite 2 or 3 medications. I ask about their eating schedule. They say, oh, I usually eat dinner around 8:30 or 9 p.m. because I get home late from work. Or I like to have a little snack before bed, maybe some crackers or cheese or a bowl of cereal. And I tell them, move dinner to 6 or 7 p.m. If you get home late, have a very light meal, mostly vegetables and lean protein, and no snacks after 8 p.m. Water only. And their blood pressure improves. Not a little, a lot. We're talking 10, 15, sometimes 20-point reductions in nighttime systolic pressure just from changing meal timing. This is especially important if your parent has diabetes or prediabetes, which many seniors do. Late-night eating makes blood sugar control worse, and poor blood sugar control damages blood vessels and worsens hypertension. So, here is my rule. Dinner should be finished by 7 p.m. If they must eat later, keep it very small and very light. A handful of nuts, a piece of fruit, but ideally nothing. And absolutely no heavy meals, no carb-heavy snacks, no desserts after 8 p.m. Their body needs those final 3 hours before bed to finish digesting, to lower insulin, to allow the kidneys to start removing excess sodium and fluid, and to prepare for the natural blood pressure drop that should happen during sleep.
Mistake number 4. Taking their blood pressure medication in the morning only. The fourth thing I would never let my parents do is take all of their blood pressure medications in the morning without considering nighttime dosing. And this one is nuanced. This is where you need to have a conversation with their doctor. But let me explain the principle. For decades, the standard recommendation was to take blood pressure medication in the morning. The reasoning was that blood pressure tends to rise in the morning when you wake up, so taking medication then made sense. And for many people, that works fine. But here is what we have learned from newer research. For a significant number of people, especially those who are non-dippers or reverse dippers, meaning their blood pressure stays high or even rises at night, taking at least one of their medications at bedtime can be more effective. There was a landmark study called the HYGEA chronotherapy trial. It followed over 19,000 patients with hypertension. Half took all their medications in the morning. Half took at least one medication at bedtime.
The bedtime group had significantly better blood pressure control during sleep, and more importantly, they had a 45% lower risk of heart attack, stroke, and cardiovascular death. 45%. That is not a small difference. That is life or death. Now, not every medication should be taken at bedtime. Some can interfere with sleep, some work better in the morning, and some people should not change their timing at all. This is why you need to involve their doctor. But here is where I have done with my own father and with many of my patients. I have them wear a 24-hour blood pressure monitor. It's a device that automatically checks blood pressure every 30 minutes throughout the day and night, and we look at the pattern. If their nighttime pressures are staying high, if they are a non-dipper, then I talk to them about moving one of their medications to bedtime. Often I'll move their ACE inhibitor or their ARB, sometimes a calcium channel blocker. It depends on what they're taking and their specific pattern. And the results can be dramatic. Nighttime blood pressure that was staying at 150/90 drops to 125/75. The nocturnal dip is restored, and their overall cardiovascular risk plummets. So, if your parent is on blood pressure medication and you've never discussed the timing with their doctor, bring it up. Ask if they are a dipper or non-dipper. Ask if 24-hour monitoring has ever been done. Ask if changing the timing of one of their medications might help. Do not just assume that morning is always the right time. For some people, especially those with nighttime hypertension, bedtime dosing can be life-saving. And now we come to the fifth and final mistake. And this is the one that surprises people the most. Mistake number 5. Sleeping in a room warmer than 68 degrees. I know, you're probably thinking, Dr. Chen, my parents like to be warm at night. They're always cold. They keep the heat up. What does room temperature have to do with blood pressure? Everything. It has everything to do with blood pressure. Here's the physiology. When you fall asleep, your core body temperature naturally drops by 1 to 2 degrees. This temperature drop is essential for deep sleep, but it also triggers something called peripheral vasodilation. That means the blood vessels in your hands and feet open up to release heat. And when those peripheral vessels dilate, when they widen, your overall blood pressure drops. But if your room is too warm, your body cannot cool down. Your core temperature stays elevated, vasodilation doesn't happen properly. Your blood vessels stay constricted and your blood pressure stays high throughout the night. Research from the journal Sleep showed that people who slept in a room at 75 degrees had significantly less nocturnal blood pressure dipping compared to people who slept in a room at 65 degrees. The cool room sleepers had blood pressure drops of 15%. The warm room sleepers only dropped by 7%. That is a huge difference. That's the difference between healthy cardiovascular recovery during sleep and spending 8 hours with elevated pressure battering your arteries. So I started paying attention to this with my father. His bedroom was always warm. He liked it at 74-75 degrees, and his nighttime blood pressure was terrible. So I convinced him to try sleeping cooler. We set the thermostat to 67 degrees. He was skeptical. He thought he would freeze. But we gave him warmer blankets, we made sure his mattress was comfortable, and after a few nights of adjustment, he slept better than he had in years. And his nighttime blood pressure dropped by an average of 12 points systolic. Now, I understand that some seniors have circulation problems and their hands and feet get very cold. That's fine. They can wear socks, they can use extra blankets. Important is that the ambient room temperature should still be cool. That's what allows the body to regulate temperature properly and trigger the cardiovascular benefits of sleep. So, if your parent sleeps in a warm room, if they keep the heat cranked up at night, have a conversation. Explain the science. Help them find ways to stay comfortable with blankets and proper bedding while keeping the room temperature between 65 and 68 degrees. Their blood pressure will thank you.
Now, I want to take a step back and talk about why I am so passionate about this topic. We live in a world where we have become very comfortable with medication. Patient has high blood pressure? Give them a pill. Blood pressure still high? Add another pill. Still not controlled? Add a third pill. And I'm not saying medication is bad.
I prescribe it every single day. For some people, medication is absolutely necessary and life-saving. But here's what frustrates me as a cardiologist. We are very quick to add medications, but we are very slow to ask about lifestyle. We are very slow to look at what the patient is doing every single night that might be causing or worsening their hypertension. And the nighttime routine is the most overlooked piece of cardiovascular health. Everyone talks about diet and exercise during the day, but almost nobody talks about what happens between 8 p.m. and bedtime. And that is when your blood pressure is either healing or being damaged. Every single thing I have talked about today is free. Stopping sweetened tea costs nothing. Turning off the news costs nothing. Eating dinner earlier costs nothing. Talking to your doctor about medication timing costs nothing. Lowering your bedroom temperature costs almost nothing. These are not expensive interventions. These are not complicated protocols. These are simple changes that can have profound impacts on cardiovascular health. And for many people, these changes can reduce or even eliminate the need for additional medications. For some, they can allow medications to be reduced or stopped entirely under doctor supervision. That matters, because blood pressure medications, while effective, have side effects. They can cause dizziness, fatigue, electrolyte imbalances. And for seniors, those side effects can be dangerous. They can lead to falls. They can interact with other medications. They can reduce quality of life. So if we can control blood pressure with lifestyle changes, if we can restore healthy nocturnal dipping with simple nighttime habits, then we should do that first. Or at minimum, we should do it alongside medication to maximize effectiveness. Now, I do not want to leave you with just a list of things to avoid. Let me tell you what I do want my parents doing before bed. Let me give you the positive recommendations. Number 1, have them drink unsweetened herbal tea or warm water if they want something comforting before bed. Peppermint, ginger, or chamomile tea without any sweeteners, or just plain warm water with a slice of lemon. Number 2, replace evening news with calming activities. Reading a physical book, listening to instrumental music or nature sounds, gentle stretching or light yoga, conversation with a loved one, meditation or prayer, anything that activates the parasympathetic nervous system and prepares the body for rest. Number 3, finish dinner by 7 p.m. Make it a lighter meal, focused on vegetables, lean protein, and healthy fats. Avoid heavy carbs and desserts late in the evening. Number 4, if they are on blood pressure medication, have a serious conversation with their cardiologist about whether 24-hour monitoring has been done and whether nighttime dosing might be appropriate. Do not change anything without doctor supervision, but definitely bring it up. Number 5, keep the bedroom cool, between 65 and 68 degrees. Use breathable cotton sheets. Use blankets for warmth, not room heat. And if their hands and feet get cold, socks are fine. And here's one bonus recommendation. Have them take magnesium glycinate, 300 to 400 milligrams 2 hours before bed. Magnesium is a natural vasodilator. It helps relax blood vessels. It activates the parasympathetic nervous system, and it can improve both sleep quality and nighttime blood pressure. But they should talk to their doctor first, especially if they're on blood pressure medications, because it can enhance the effects. These 5 simple habits, done consistently, can restore healthy nocturnal blood pressure dipping in many seniors. And that can literally add years to their life. Now, I know some of you watching this might be feeling guilty right now. Maybe your parent is doing 3 or 4 of these mistakes every night. Maybe they've been doing them for years. Maybe you're thinking, I should have known. I should have paid attention. I should have asked more questions. Please, do not feel guilty. Medicine is constantly evolving. What we knew 10 years ago is not what we know today. What we will know 10 years from now will be different from what we know today. You are not expected to be a cardiologist. You are not expected to know everything. The fact that you're watching this video right now, the fact that you made it this far, tells me everything I need to know about you. It tells me you care. It tells me you're trying to be informed. It tells me you love your parents and you want to do right by them. And that's all any of us can do. We make the best decisions we can with the information we have. And going forward, you now have better information.
You are now equipped to have better conversations with your parents. You are now a better advocate for their health. That is powerful. That is meaningful. That is what loving your parents looks like in practical terms. If this video helped you, if it gave you something specific to talk to about your parents, if it made you think differently about cardiovascular health, then I need you to do 3 things right now. First, hit that subscribe button. We make videos like this every single week, breaking down complex medical topics into practical information that can help you protect the people you love. Second, like this video. It helps YouTube show it to more people who need this information. And trust me, there are thousands of adult children out there right now whose parents are making these same mistakes and they have no idea. And third, and this is the most important one, share this video. Share it on Facebook where your aunts and uncles will see it. Text it to your siblings and say, "We need to talk about mom and dad's bedtime routine." Send it directly to your parents with a message that says, "I watched this and I think we should try a few of these changes together." Information has power if it reaches the people who need it, and you have the power to make that happen right now.